Hello, everyone. Welcome to another episode of 10 Forward Weekly. My name is Mike Fadem. I am your community manager, and for today's stream, apparently I will be playing the part of Tall Man, while Jonathan plays the part of Short Man. Welcome to 10 Forward Weekly. It's a pleasure to have y'all here. We announced some big changes last week to not last week, this morning, to some abilities that have long since needed some love. And so we thought we'd invite Jonathan on today to talk about that. However, before we do that, we must, of course, look at some fan art. So, first of all, Trexpert sent us his first attempt at a clump ship. I don't know how he made this. Maybe, well, no, because he's on console. He doesn't have demo record. I have no idea how he made this, but it's hilarious, and I love it. All Things Trek 47 sent us this really cool shot of a Borg sphere running around. Charles Byington sent us his designs for a neutralizer class dreadnought, which looks like a three nacelled version of the Odyssey class, or possibly the Yorktown. Oh, okay, so that is you editing a. Oh, thank you, Sovereign42. That is a you editing a demo record, Trexpert. Got it. I didn't know you had a PC version as well. That Stu says Yorktown. Okay, it's a Yorktown. God of Rage sent us this shot. He's was trying to recreate the scene in Discovery where the spore drive sent them into the sun by accident, and it's very cool. Jeff W sent us this shot. He just signed up for a lifetime sale. Thank you, Jeff. Lifetime subscription. Thank you, Jeff, and got a. My brain just yeeted the name of this ship. Jonathan, do you know the name of the ship that you get for lifetime? Someone's going to tell me in chat in about 5 seconds.
Super
Chimera.
Chimera. All right.
There we go. Thank you, chat. John Davis sent us this shot of his Ferengi character capturing a T-Rex or a V-Rex to sell to Madron. Nothing will go wrong there.
I saw that when that got posted. That
Yeah.
was super good.
It looks awesome. Oh, by the way, speaking of that, I've heard your cries about the fact that sometimes you can run around the whole map there and not get credit for the V-Rex because because somebody else got there first and killed him. So we're having some discussions about that. I don't know what's going to come out of it. Lots of ideas have been posited, but discussions are happening. Mar Hawkman sent us the ultimate "the floor is lava" picture. I don't. Okay, this is clearly. This is in an old mission. I recognize the map, and he's using. We have the floor is lava power that he's definitely using. I'm not sure. It looks like he's using a couple of different powers here, though.
I don't know what's causing the weird filter with the wall.
Yeah.
Is that just the Ryzian one?
I don't think so, but maybe. Oh, apparently this is the new TFO, not an old map. I thought it looked like the Enterprise F interior from way back in the day. And that's the summer event module. Okay, cool. Oh, it's from Birdcage. Okay. Michael Lewis Brown sent us this really cool shot of his Vengeance flying through space, blowing something the hell up. Nice job. And Stu1701 is continuing to love my favorite line of dialogue from the past mission. But now, I assume this is his character, is telling Sean that Admiral Lita doesn't know what she's talking about, and her combat logs aren't very good either. And finally, Duncan saw our teaser on social media for the anniversary bundle and decided to make his own version with just tardigrades. I look forward to the updated version after the reveal on Saturday, which, by the way, Saturday is when you'll find out the rest of the ships, guys. And the bundle looks cool. I was looking at all the contents today. There's a whole lot of stuff in there. Mandalore 08 says Sean installs Magi to compensate. All right. Well, now that we're done with the wonderful opening part of the stream, let's dive into a little bit of talk about pilot bridge officer powers. Now, John, this was a personal crusade of yours, I believe,
Yep.
because these things were just not working as well as we would like, or as anyone would like.
So generally, there's two big restrictions on how I get to fix stuff in the game, or embark on improving things. And the first is scheduling, like getting the right to throw some of my own time at it can be difficult because my time's often spoken for. And the second is
Ships, ships,
dependencies.
ships,
And
ships, 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 ships. Sorry,
well,
I was describing a
live
lot of your schedule.
service, really, right?
Yeah,
It's ships now, but it used to be other stuff. Ultimately, it's an in progress thing. It can't be put on hold while I just like go off and do whatever I want to do.
yeah,
But yeah, the other problem is FX dependency, character art dependency, anything that takes other people's time. So now I'm just not spending my own time, I'm spending other people's time. Makes it a lot harder to do. So I started looking for, well, what can I do without other people's time? And that brought me to balance passes. Um, Nerfing is like really disruptive, but buffing is pretty safe. So what I've been trying to do lately, and I started with Pilot, is like look for places where there's something that's just not working the way it's supposed to, and all it really needs is a little bit of love, and I don't have to go, catch a VFX artist with a pool skimmer in order to make it happen. I can just go do it. And that led to the Pilot abilities because they really needed help. Got started around the same time I started on ships, but it would have totally happened independent of that. Doesn't have anything to do with that timing.
for sure. How long did it take you to jump to do this stuff? I mean, obviously, it's taking a few minutes here or there in your spare time, but
Yeah, it's kind of a bastard to measure. There was like an inception period where I was selecting pilot, and part of that was like we were looking at the upcoming ship schedule and we were like, boy, the pilots would make sense for some of these ships as a specialty, but like part of our thinking is, well, is the ship going to function? And if all the Boff abilities are kind of dumpy and I can't find like, okay, maybe they'd want the, like with command or with temp op or intel miracle worker, you can think about which powers people would put in which slots in which builds. And pilot, it's just like they probably don't unless they like lock trajectory a lot because it's a lot of fun.
I
Like
do love
there's not
lock
re-
trajectory.
it's a lot of fun,
It is.
but I want to reward you for doing the fun thing. I don't want to like punish you for doing the fun thing. But anyway, yeah, it made it clear that pilot was probably the best place to move the needle.
Yeah. Okay, so well, let's talk about the first thing we made changes to, which is you jumped onto some engineer bridge officer abilities, and I'll just read through really quick what we
Sure.
changed here. So for emergency power to shields, it now grants immunity to shield drain when your shields are reduced to 20, 35, or 50% total capacity, and reverse shield polarity just straight up grants immunity to shield drain. What was sort of your thought process on those?
Okay, so that was pretty straightforward. It kind of the story goes back a long ways, but essentially Borg drain the heck out of your shields, and they're supposed to, and we don't want to screw with that. But the way they do it doesn't really play nice with shield drain resistance. In order to get enough shield drain resistance to stop the Borg draining your shields, you'd need like an incomprehensible amount of it. And in my view, it's good that the Borg have a sharp strength like that. I don't want to take it away from them. It's one of the main things they did on the show. So the idea was to give players the way to play around it, and at the same time give engineering a little love, because the higher rank engineering bridge officer abilities are, that may be a little bit less desirable. So now there's like, it's kind of a win-win there. And then for the specific fiction, it makes a ton of sense, right? Like reroute emergency power to shields, reverse shield polarity. These are actions that you take on the show when someone took a crap in your shields and you need to fix it. So it makes a lot of sense that that's what you do about the in-game problem too.
Okay, cool. So, I had a question actually, so, and I'll see if any questions in chat pop up because I know some people were saying they wanted to ask about shields. With
Yeah, I've heard a
the
lot of buzz
emergency,
about it. I think
yeah,
like some of these changes might have got teased and people thought it meant like a bigger shield rework. That's not in the cards. Like we're not looking at that, but it's definitely like an ongoing. I would say the way I would choose to describe it is that I have a couple questions about shields as a mechanic in Stowe. The first question is, why do I want to be a shield tank instead of a hull tank, or is that even something I want?
yeah,
Like maybe shields and hull are just two different elements of tanking. and they both appear on the same builds. But in my head, I like the idea of being able to, like, if you want to fly a Protoss Archon in space, you're allowed to do that. Like, if you want to just be shields with like one hit point,
Well,
I
and
should
shields
let
are an
you.
important part of the IP. Like, they're
Well,
the
they're the
thing. Yeah,
coolest part about
yeah,
the IP. One of the best parts of space combat. Like,
yeah,
one of Stowe's strengths is that the space combat is really good compared to a lot of other games,
yeah,
and shields are kind of part of that. So it'd be cool to like come up with a clear description of what they're supposed to do. And I think originally the intent was they're the mechanic that stops torpedoes, and you need
yeah,
to have shields, otherwise you die to torpedoes. But
yeah.
that led to players getting murked by a double D at level 40 all the time, so like that's kind of evolved in a different direction.
I have never heard of the Daredex referred to as a double D, and I love that.
Oh yeah, 2 Ds for a double dose.
um, so yeah, I think if you go through the tutorials, for example, one of the first things we teach you is like shoot down your enemy's shields with phasers and then fire a torpedo to kill them, but literally no one plays that way. Once you get up to higher levels, everybody just loads all the energy weapons they have up and murks everybody. So I think you're right that that was the initial intent, that it would be like this. Okay, you lose shields, now you're vulnerable.
Sure. I could also see shields having an interaction with like critical hits. That makes sense to me because they like protect the sensitive parts of your system,
Oh
so
yeah,
it seems reasonable. But ultimately, the reason we're not looking at shields is more budgetary and less priority. If I was like given a free hand to go dig around in the game systems, probably shields would be the first place I'd look. But that's pretty disruptive. It touches a lot of things. It's not as easy to do while the plane's in the air. That's one of the things you
yeah.
want to do while the plane's on the tarmac. And this thing don't land, so probably I wouldn't hold my breath. But I might find little targeted things I can do here and there. Opportunistic things like this where it just kind of helps, and that you might see.
Okay, cool. I like it. A question about emergency power to shields that I had. So since it grants immunity when your shields are reduced to these values depending on rank, since the Borg just rip your shields off entirely, it doesn't prevent that from happening as much as reverse shield polarity would, right?
It kinda. That's where it gets interesting. So how the Borg shield drain works is it's a proper shield drain tagged as a shield drain, so it does get affected, but it trucks you every tick. So if you're using the basic like rank 1 emergency power to shields, it's only gonna kick in when you fall below the threshold, and the Borg probably has enough drain power to get you to 0 in a tick from that threshold, unless your ship has a ton of shields. So generally speaking, the more shields your ship has, the lower emergency power to shield you can get away with to stop the incoming drain. But realistically, you're probably going to want a higher rank value. Once the immunity kicks in, the Borg shield drain does literally nothing. It just bounces off.
Oh, okay. Cool. Make people uh, run through infected space even faster. uh,
That oh man, talking about core game systems, I'd love to support better. It's tempting to rabbit hole, but if I just start pie in the skying things, it's just going to make the waters real muddy. So
yeah, and people are gonna
I got I
be
got a
like,
lot
"You
of
said
hopes
you
and
would do this,
ambitions.
and you didn't."
Exactly, my eyes are much larger than my stomach.
Yeah. Okay, so we've got questions. Let's see. Uh, okay, that's a pilot question, so we'll ask that. Mike Dude 34, re-ask your question later, so I see it. Let's see.
Yes, it lasts 10 seconds.
What?
It lasts the full 10 seconds, and it works on everything that uses the placate attrib.
Okay. Darth Dragonborn 107 says, since we're getting this new shield update, won't that also disrupt player shield drain builds since NPC ships will have them?
Yeah, possibly. I wouldn't say that's super likely, but I could imagine it happening. There's a couple issues that stand in the way of that really being a big problem. The first is that I did not touch how the AI interacts with the engineer abilities, so the AI isn't going to be trying to use them to protect its shields. It's just going to use them when it has them. And then second, we tend not to give the AI a ton of heals anyway, and they're both big shield heals. Um, in fact, reverse shield polarity would be particularly trolly to put on AI ships. Imagine some poor new players like,
It's saying in chat that some people have okay, maybe not emergency power to shield, but maybe not reverse shield polarity. Okay, God of Rage, that is not a question for this stream, but I will answer very quickly. It's because if there's a fully unlocked Taylor and you just have access to everything, you will make things that look terrible because uh, things will clip through each other and not fit with each other and not be for the right body type, and it just will explode. Um,
I love the idea of feedback pulse on NPCs though. That would be so. It's like when you gather 15 Zen Kethi into one gravity well, they all learn feedback pulse.
Oh God! One of my favorite things, and I guess favorite is the right word, even though it's kind of hilariously bad, is that first of all, the Zenkethi have existed for like 5 years now, 4 years,
Hmm.
and second of all, like their design, what they do is pretty well known, but you still get players dropping gravity wells on them constantly. All right,
The Zenkethi, they're an example of an NPC group that has a sharp strength, right? Like,
yeah,
I like the Borg Shield Drain. I want to like the Zenkethi defensive mechanic, but it's not communicated at all. And
yeah.
that's an obstacle for me.
It
What I
was
would love to
communicated
see
in the
is that,
blogs
like,
initially, but you need to have a tutorialization in the game. I agree.
yeah, the pitch I made that I've been playing with internally, and this is something that might happen, no guarantees, might happen, is I'm playing with the idea of like instead of they get more resist the more there are together, it's like a threshold where once you get to like five of them, it turns on and it's just a binary on and off, and it has like I use one of the various shield bubble visuals. I like put a little bubble around the ships, at least give it some kind of like crisp on and off and some
Yeah,
kind of way to tell it's happening. But I wouldn't hold my breath on that. It just if it can be fit in, I'm gonna do it. Otherwise, probably not.
I really like your way of explaining these things. Of like, yeah, we could do it maybe eventually, but you know,
It's all
uh,
opportunity cost, right? It's like playing a weird 4X. I just try to create as much value as I can with what I got.
yeah. Okay, so K Baus has posted this question a couple of times, so I'm gonna try and parse it for you. It says, I like the emergency power to shields and reverse shield polarity changes. Consider changing the engineer captain ability rotate shield frequency to give it. I'm adding some words here. To give it bonus drain resistance to. Oh, sorry. No, consider changing engineer captain ability rotate shield frequencies bonus drain resistance to immunity or significantly boost it. It's less effective than the proposed changes, but apparently it's also easy to. Oh no, given the ease of 100% uptime for emergency power to
Basically,
shields, it might be
if I
too
may,
powerful. Yeah, go ahead.
yeah, yeah. The suggestion is essentially, hey, why don't you put some of this on engineering captain abilities, and people can like maintain near perfect uptime on shield drain. And the answer to that I'd have is essentially there wasn't really a weakness in engineer captain abilities or captain abilities generally the way that there was in engineer bridge officer abilities, and the more I spread the capability around, the less good it does with regards to that problem. And unless there's some kind of like pressing need where players have to like overcome the shield drain resistance of other players, it's kind of hard to imagine the 100% uptime being a problem. If you want to make a ship that has 100% uptime to shield drain immunity from Borg, may I recommend DPS League and murdering them? Like, your shields stay up if they're dead.
Okay, well, let's get into the pilot abilities. Well, I'm just gonna go through these one at a
No,
time, and you can talk.
more serious. Oh, I should say more seriously. I do respect the like. There's an issue with design and immunities where you don't want to let people run away with it. You don't want to let immunities have 100% uptime. There is potentially a world where we would put some kind of like immunity lockout the way we have on other immunity mechanics. I don't want to prejudge that as guilty till proven innocent. I want to see if that problem occurs in the game because I'm pretty suspicious we're not going to encounter it. I think it's probably going to be fine. But
Yeah,
if it comes up, that's something I would consider.
yeah,
All this stuff is kind of tentative, right? Like all these changes to the engineer bridge officer ability and pilot bridge officer abilities are subject to tweaks.
yeah.
Probably
And we're going to
directionally they'll
be,
stay where they are, but how they achieve what they achieve may change.
yeah, we're going to be watching what y'all do with them, and by we, I mean Jonathan, and seeing how things perform and what the feedback is. And so these things are going live this week, but they might change in the future. Okay, so let's go through the pilot abilities, and we'll just do them one at a time, and you can talk about what
Sure thing.
each one is. So, for energy weapons, reroute reserves to weapons. We
That's a big
improved the
one.
haste from 20, 40, 60 to 75, 150, 225. Engine power drain was normalized at 8, which is the highest value before. If engine power reaches 0, the effect ends and the shared category cooldown is reset, and remaining duration is subtracted from other energy weapon firing mode recharge times. So tell us a little bit about that.
All right. First off, these changes are to just the bridge officer skills. We're not touching the passives at this time. Um, for why this way? So the first thing is like the biggest issue with all these specialization firing modes is that they share a cooldown category with the like normal firing modes, but they are not near as supported. They don't have anywhere near as many traits that hook into them. They don't have anywhere near as many cool toys. So it almost doesn't help them to make them stronger without improving that ecosystem. So what you're going to see going forward is more stuff that's like when you use a specialized firing mode or something like that, trying to treat them as all one category so they can actually get some kind of passives and bonuses going. That's going to help, but that's more of a slow over time thing. And then looking at this one specifically, this one had a bit of an identity crisis. It's a single target DPS like power, but it's not like beam overload, but is kind of doing the same job as beam overload, and that puts it in a weird position. So coming into it with all that stuff, I didn't want to change its core identity. I didn't want to make it like not a single target power, but at the same time, it just being kind of crappy hipster beam overload isn't really a good identity. So the idea was that now it's kind of a burn the candle at both ends power where you cash out your engine power because with 225% weapon haste and 8 power drain per shot, it is not going to be trivial to keep your engine fully powered during that maneuver. Probably you're going to spend your whole engine power bar on an opponent. And I am doing so much with my hands, and my camera's picking up like 5% of it. It's frustrating. But
You can try tilting it down. There you go.
this might be cursed as hell. We'll see.
Yeah.
I'm dealing with the like gigantic Twitch lag.
Not
All right. This is kind of a
bad.
little more reasonable.
You look fine.
Anyways, yeah, so the idea is that some people might figure out how to keep it up the whole duration. Probably most people will just accept that their engine power is going to zero out, especially DPS chaser types or people who are already like kind of parking their ship a lot when they get to the position they want to be in. They don't super need their engine power for a lot anyway, unless they're running Soliton or whatever. So it seemed like it would have a niche. And the other thing is, when it does cash out, it sort of refunds the cooldown and gets out of the way of the other firing modes. So you can run it alongside Beam Overload, but not on top of Beam Overload. They won't work at the same time. So I'm hopeful that that will open up the door to, maybe people who like want to trigger a large number of individual weapon attack events for some other synergies, or I can start to imagine builds that want this.
Yeah. Cool. And yeah, no, that makes sense. Does does the engine power drain return instantly when a weapon stops firing? At Assault wants to know.
I It's just a cost. Like when you spend the 8 engine power to shoot the laser, you just don't have it anymore, and it returns whatever rate it returns at. That's going to be based on your EPS conduits, going to be based on your other sources of power generation. There are a handful of traits and mechanics that give you little bits of power as you go. A lot of things that grant max power grant current power in a way where if your current power is below your max, it will like refill it. So kinda.
Okay.
I
Brett77C says it comes back up based on your EPS skills, so that makes sense. Uh, cool. Sorry. So let's move on to clean getaway. Uh, so first of all, we improved the duration, or you improved the duration from 468 to 81012. And after 3 seconds of having the power active, each second your ship avoids damage recovers 1 second recharge of bridge officer and captain abilities. Tell us about that.
All right. And first, a little quick side question. Yeah, I use a parser and I have a little stable of meta builds that I update from time to time. It takes a long time to build one though. It's like a whole day to put one together. So I prefer to like not try to be at the bleeding edge of meta. Like I try to hover around A tier. I don't usually try to push my stuff to S plus to test it, but your mileage may vary, right? And then for some edge cases, I will bust out an S plus tier DPS build just to see what happens, but that's not as common. For the most part, it's more about comparison to other points and having an understanding of like what kind of footprint it has, and then when the footprint looks a little suspicious, that's when the parser comes out. Um, as for clean getaway was the one you asked about?
Yes, but actually we've got a
Yeah,
question, one more question about energy weapons and powder weapons, which
sure,
is
yeah.
the 8 engine power cost on top of the weapon power cost or
Instead,
instead of? Okay, cool. All right, yeah, tell me about clean getaway.
yeah. So clean getaway. This is a power that just basically didn't have a reason to exist before. There are a lot of powers where you push the button and you try to achieve safety. This one was like really restrictive. It only worked in like a cone behind you and for a really short duration. It just didn't know what it wanted to be. So rather than make it, try to compete for the crown of best escape power, I tried to give it a situation where you would specifically want it more than another escape power. And the idea is now that it rewards you for a clean getaway. If you actually can get to the point where your ship is no longer taking damage, it'll give you your cooldowns back.
That's really
It
cool.
doesn't do as much to achieve safety as some of the other safety powers do, but it rewards you if you do it.
I've seen a lot of questions about whether any of these are being defined as control abilities. K-Bouse was asking about this one specifically for secondary deflector purposes. What do
Yeah,
you think about
control
that?
tag. The control tag is not something I'm choosing based on balance right now. It's something I'm choosing based on meta definition, like the not meta as in what's effective, but meta as in meta contextual. It is control is a game term. That's not something I really want to play with from a pure balance perspective. Clean getaway applies a placate. Placate is a control effect, therefore clean getaway should have the control tag. It may have gone to the test server without it. I think I fixed a bug related to that. But like a stat debuff, for example, something that's like minus accuracy, to my mind, that starts to get a little more muddy. Um, a movement speed slow is obviously a control ability. A damage debuff isn't. What's an accuracy debuff? Gets a little fuzzy there. But generally speaking, I would view it comes down to is it restricting your ability to access a game action? I'm getting real technical here, but if it restricts your ability to access a game action as opposed to restricts the effectiveness of a game action, that to me is what makes an ability a control ability.
Okay, cool. Quick apology to Facebook. For some reason, it wasn't showing me your comments up until this point, but I am seeing them now. Quick question from Thomas Christopher Staton, who wants to know: will Bounty Hunter's friend be affected by these changes? Example, the minus 10% weapon drain cost.
Bounty Hunter's Friend?
I
Not
believe
familiar with
it's.
that. What is that?
I think it's in we had a smuggler lockbox that put out some traits and stuff like that.
Yeah, that's neat. I'm searching it quick. What's the interaction in question?
The 10% weapon drain cost.
Is Bounty Hunter's Friend like an power? I'm not seeing it.
I don't know. Well, let me just hit up the Stow wiki really
Bounty
quick.
Hunter's Instinct or Hunter? Oh, wait, are we talking about Hunter's Instinct and like the Klingon one, or this sounded
He
specifically like
says,
a smugly kind of.
yeah, he says it's a Lobby store power.
Yeah, if you can give me the power name, I can look up the interaction. But it's an item. Okay, and the interactions with Clean Getaway.
Yep, Bounty Hunter's friend info. Okay, so it says here on the Stow wiki, it gives you plus 22. It gives you plus energy damage resistance rating, plus Starship Shield restoration, and then a minus 10% weapon power cost.
Yeah, that would not interact with emergency power to weapons. No cost modification is going to work with that. It basically negates the weapon cost, like at a functional level, and then imposes its own engine cost. And unless something is built specifically to work with it, it can't even see the new cost.
All right, makes sense. All right, if there's no other questions about Clean Getaway, although I see a lot of people saying they love that in PvP, so I'm glad you're having fun with that, and it'll even be better now. Hopefully, I can maybe slot it so I can get out of the spawn area in the PvP zone.
Oh yeah, we use StoWiki all the time too. Like
Oh yeah,
obviously, right? Like
totally.
that's huge.
All the time when I need information about stuff, I could go through years of blog posts, or I could just search on StoWiki really fast. People who
Yeah, we
update that, thank you, you're awesome.
yeah, we obviously have our internal pool of knowledge that we want to be as big as possible, but we would be absolute fools to leave player knowledge on the table. Like we're
Mm-hmm.
going to learn as much as we can from you guys, obviously.
Yeah. Okay, so next up is, and this one's a fun change, deploy countermeasures. So now the ability additionally deploys holographic images of your starship, which taunt foes and vanish after taking damage. The number of holographic images and duration scale with your ability rank, so 3, 4, 6 images and
Yep.
13, 18, 23 second duration, and we remove the chance to confuse. Let's talk about that.
Oh yeah, pretty straightforward. It's just basic mirror image. It still does the kinetic immunity thing for folks who like that. And the confused chance was just too hard to feel, too little benefit, too niche. Didn't seem like it deserved a place on the power.
Cool. All right.
Yeah,
Um,
generally as we go down the list, these are going to get a lot simpler. The first ones are the spicy ones.
Great. John Davis01 wants to know if it'll deploy a giant inflatable dreadnought.
I don't know specifically how holograms work, so I can't confirm inflatable.
Master of Overskill wants to know if you want to join the STO Builds Discord. I'm going to say that opening yourself to that sort of feedback and conversation all the time might be detrimental to your productivity in the workplace, but that is certainly up to you.
I will admit the idea of being a fly on the wall in certain Discord channels has been very interesting to me, but there's a big difference between being a fly on the wall and being an approachable
Mm-hmm.
presence in the room.
Mm-hmm.
And I have seen that go incredibly badly.
Mm-hmm.
And there's also a big difference between like playing the game until I arrive in that community naturally versus playing the game as a more casual fella who has a pretty deep systems understanding who works on the game coming in.
Yeah.
Like there's just an entirely different vibe. I wasn't here during the Parser Wars. I wasn't here for the shenanigans. I'm not steeped in the soup enough to taste like the soup. So like I don't know. There's a world where I ask to maybe lurk. I don't see myself actively participating. I want to feel it out, go slow. I know there's, I've seen this stuff go right and I've seen it go really wrong.
Yeah. I think we need to make a book of all of your metaphors from this stream tonight. I haven't been steeped in the soup enough to taste like the soup. Is another great
Oh
one.
yeah, yeah. I mean, I'm just happy I'm keeping my cursing to a minimum.
Yeah, that's amazing.
And there's going to be plenty of f bombs, like as there already have been. I'm sure. I wasn't counting, but I trust.
I'm going to ask a couple off-topic questions here. Baboon Ryzen wants to know if we would ever consider expanding commando, strategist, and constable into full specs as opposed to the sort of half specs they are now.
Interesting. I have thought about working on them. I will definitely say that. They are high on my radar, especially Constable. Because, like, let's be real. Constable's the Odo tree, but it doesn't, like, it's got a weird mismatch. You can't promise someone that they get to be Odo. Odo's not about his job, but he kind of is. He's like a noir detective puppy. Like, he's fantastic, but capturing that energy with a skill tree is an incredible challenge. So expand them to be full trees where you have like constable bridge officer powers. That doesn't feel right to me. Like there weren't a lot of times Odo did something at the con that was fantastic.
Yeah.
But rework them definitely on the radar. It's just a matter of like this touches a more broad issue to me, which is like I really want spec trees to have ideally a direct, but at minimum a feelable or inferable impact on your gameplay. And right now they just don't have the power budget for that. There's not room to give them the power budget for that. And I would hesitate to screw around with the passives if I don't feel like I can make them good. So I would want to deal with the overarching problem first. And, well, an infinity of opportunities, very limited resources, et cetera, et cetera. Probably they will end up not being prioritized.
Makes sense. All right. Julie DeVos, we asked that question earlier. The answer was, I think, a definite maybe. Dunter Wallen, I hope I pronounced that right. I'm sorry if I didn't. Wants to know if there's any planned reworks for carriers coming, because that's another situation that we know needs a lot of love.
Oh yeah, that one's actually a lot closer on the horizon. So that's one of the changes I want to talk about. How close on the list to Reinforcement Squadron are we?
I think it's
Is that
next. So let's
next?
go to
I think it's
reinforcement
next.
squadron. So
Hell
your
yeah.
ship receives bonus damage from your accuracy and critical severity. Uh, Fighters receive bonus damage. Okay, that's just yeah. And summon fighters are immune to core breaches. So tell us about that.
Yeah, so well, immune to core breaches is just that should have been there. It's weird it wasn't fixing that. But the scaling. So one of the things that stops minion mancer builds from working right is that they basically are blind to your gear. You have to like collect enumerated powers that care about them, and you have to collect like items that spawn them, but there's no stats they scale with. So there's just this like weird missing tool in the arsenal. So we're taking the opportunity to buff reinforcement squadron and also do a little bit of experimentation. Introducing a way for your stat to directly scale your pet and kind of observing how that goes in the wild, how people interact with it, will open the door to potentially either introducing more traits that let your pet scale or potentially adding baseline scaling. I could see scaling being a different thing per pet, like each pet might care about a different scaler. These are things that can be done without FX, without character art, so they are on the higher end of likelihood to occur. I wouldn't say north of 50-50. At this point, they're still just a glimmer in my eye, but yeah, I'm thinking about them pretty loudly.
Well, there we go. That's cool. Yeah, it's funny. Carriers are funny because they're such a fun thing to fly, but they're also like so rare in other Star Trek IP. They take some time, especially in TNG, to be like, why would people use fighters?
Yeah,
So,
meanwhile, Discovery, we
yeah,
have
yep,
budget now. That's why. FX budget. Who
yeah,
knew?
so
Section
many
31 is
fighters.
here with far more than 31 fighters.
Wraith Strata wants to know. I don't think this is something that would require art time, which we just discussed. You didn't have, but they want to know if you considered swapping them out with the newer
Oh,
squadron
yeah.
style fighters.
Yeah, Squadron is it's a whole kettle of fish. We'll probably continue to make more Squadron stuff, but I do not consider it likely that we will convert old things to be Squadron.
I want a squadron ship so bad, John. I want it.
Right?
I want it so bad. We're so
Yeah,
close.
we thought about it
It
a few times. There's
it
definitely
like
interesting parts.
almost works. There's just like a few little things that we need to fix for everyone to be happy with it. But yes, let's see. Um, okay, let's move on to the next power, unless you had something more you wanted to say about
Let's
Reinforcement
keep it
Squadron.
rolling.
All right. So form up. Bonus damage now starts at max value. It doesn't ramp up over the duration. And the teleport range is now 20 kilometers for all ranks. So what did form up do before, and what does it do now?
So it used to be that the teleport range scaled up with rank and the bonus scaled up with time. So you had to like meet this tight conditional, and then you were rewarded in a very stingy way that only slowly ramped up, and it was all taken away for any deviation. That's just archaic game design. That's not how we do things. You want crisp rewards for significant action. When the player accepts a really strict restriction, like I have to stay very close to this other ship, you should reward them in a way that's more impactful than that, that's upfront. And then having the range scale is also something that is just not great from a design perspective. You don't want the way that you learn to use something to like wildly fluctuate based on something like that. So
Yeah.
yeah, it's just more usable now. It does the same stuff it was trying to do before. Now it's sort of good at it.
Nice. Sort of good. Sometimes the
That's
only thing we can
basically
hope
the whole
for.
list. Outside of the first four, everything else on the list is does the same shit it was trying to do before, but now it sucks marginally less. Ideally, it's kind of good.
uh, all right. Let's go to
Oh, that's sneaky. I see a comment here. Yeah, I didn't touch the facing on it. Anecdotally, I suppose you'd probably rather face the same way that the ally you're teleporting to is
yeah,
facing.
definitely.
But the hard part about that is that now your visual context is entirely like changed. If you at least face the same way you were facing before, your brain will get it more. If we just like if we suddenly spun you, it would be nauseating. If we just snap you, it'll be disorienting. So probably, I mean, it definitely shouldn't be fucking random, but probably it should be the same as what you're currently facing, so that your monitor doesn't go crazy on you. Because your brain's gonna have to like dump everything and just restart. It's that experience of walking into a room and forgetting what you were there for. That would happen every time. So like Yeah, probably you should stay facing the same way you're already facing, and I'll take a look at that to make sure that's the way it works.
I love that you were so proud of yourself for not swearing, and then you immediately said shit and dropped an f bomb. Well
Oh
done.
yeah, no, I was being sarcastic. I'm proud of myself for swearing.
Oh, well done. All right. Subspace boom. Explosion damage significantly increased. Roughly speaking, improved by 50%. And a large debuff to accuracy added to the explosion. Is that a debuff to the accuracy of the explosion, or does it give your enemies a debuff to accuracy?
It gives your enemies a debuff to accuracy. The explosion fills the volume and is therefore quite accurate.
Nice. Kind of feeling. Cool. Any
Yeah,
thoughts on
pretty
that one?
straightforward there. It just sucked at what it was trying to do. It made you wait a long time to get the reward and then was stingy with the reward. The change here is I wanted to give it a little something to make it different than just an explosion because there are obviously plenty of those. And so a colossal accuracy penalty seemed like a good place to look because we haven't done, we've done comparatively little with accuracy in the game, especially in like the interactive space where you're like debuffing opponents' accuracy and caring about opponents' accuracy. So I wanted to try a pretty chunky accuracy debuff to see how it feels.
Nice. Lord Blastington wants to know if the revamp implies we're going to get more pilot ships. There is one pilot ship coming very soon. Anyway, moving on. We have a couple
Yeah,
questions about interactions here. Uh, uh, Rayfire3557 wants to know if Subspace Boom will trigger Spore Infused Anomaly.
good question. I believe. Let me check whether it spawns a thing or detonates, because one of them spawns a thing and one of them detonates, and I don't recall which is which off the top of my head, because a lot of this work I did a while ago, and it's just now shipping. Let me see. Yeah, Subspace Boom spawns a hazard, so I would expect that to work with hazard things. If it's missing the hazard tag, I can add that. And a lot of this stuff too, like some of the stuff might end up over or underpowered and might need follow-up changes. And that might not be because I typed a silly number in a tooltip, though I have been known to type me a silly number. Sometimes it happens because of tagging. So like there's absolutely a world where I make something over or underpowered due to a tag decision. I would probably not take away the tag or add a new tag to respond to that. Probably I would balance the numbers to try to make up for the tagging.
Nice. All right. Quickly, just to Darth Dragonborn 107 has asked this question 45 times. There are several power sets with several weapon sets within the game that don't have a upgradable omnidirectional beam array. Is that something you're looking into in the future?
Nope.
Cool.
Sorry.
No worries. Sylvester Cox III wants to know, will any of the pilot powers interact with unconventional systems?
Probably. Certainly ones that are getting at a control tag that were missing it before would directly interact.
Okay, cool.
Yeah,
Uh,
hazards and anomalies should not have a meaningful distinction. There should not be a gameplay distinction between the two.
okay, cool.
There
Uh,
is sometimes, there just shouldn't be.
all right. Subspace. So, just a quick thing. I've seen a bunch of people on both Facebook and Twitch saying, when are you going to make a new thing? Jonathan sort of answered that earlier with talk about schedule and time and how the plane never lands. Uh, there won't really be any information on. Oh, yes, we're definitely making a new specialization tonight. Because
Oh yeah.
we probably aren't, and B, if we were, we wouldn't announce it.
It's also
So
over my helmet, right? Like that
yeah.
stuff's not up to me. I'm happy to talk about what is up to me, but there's plenty that ain't.
Yeah. All right, lock trajectory. As we discussed earlier, the fun power, but now it has a buff to critical chance.
Oh yeah. This was pretty straightforward. I picked crit chance and it wasn't an accident. Crit chance is a saucy statistic. Lock trajectory is a lot of fun for people who like the playstyle. It's a core space fantasy. It's absolutely unacceptable to me that the power is not effective. I want that power to be effective. Like I love me some Star Trek. Star Trek doesn't play with its zero G a lot. A lot of its ships maneuver and fight more like naval warfare or submarines.
Yep.
But there's other sci-fi. I likes me some Babylon 5. I want to see like I want to see
Oh
like
god,
crazy space maneuvers,
drifting in space is so much fun. That's why I love my
right?
ship. All right, so pilot team now grants a modest bonus to defense during the effect, 7.5, 15, and 22.5, and it now grants immunity to placate. I saw a lot of discussion about immunity to placate coming
Yeah.
up earlier.
So, immunity to placate. This is another one of those where, well, immunity is a spicy mechanic. It's not something a designer throws around lightly. And yeah, immunity to placate is for the full 10 seconds. There was like a tooltip error briefly, but yeah, 2 second placate immunity is like, that's not even enough time to cycle a phaser. Like, no one cares about that. No,
Yeah.
10 seconds is where we're trialing it at. And for the most part, this is definitely something that's not going to come up a whole ton where you're fighting opponents in, normal AI opponents. It is, for the most part, something that is going to be more impactful in PvP. So I'm going to be trying to learn there. I'm going to be trying to listen. I do not have the best understanding of how PvP works, but I know I damn sure don't like a world where Placate dominates PvP interaction. And I am certain, this being PvP, that there is an endless sequence of the spider, swallow the spider to catch the fly situation happening where the placate is the only thing protecting us from parasitic ice or whatever. I'm sure there's going to be a lot of that. So I'm going to keep an eye on it. And if I need to nerf some like weird uncleansable crowd controls, I will totally do that. But the amount of time and effort I can devote to PvP is extremely limited. And so I'm just trying to be sensitive, trying to be a good custodian. I am not trying to upset the apple cart, but there is a difference between not trying to like there comes a point where letting it sit in the state it's in is like unacceptable, and placate to me is across that line. Placate is just miserable experience. The idea here is that PvP teams will be heavily incentivized to bring pilot team to deal with placate to the extent that placate's in the meta. The more placates you run into, the more pilot teams you want. But pilot's also pretty good at applying placate, so there's some weirdness there, some like mixed messaging and cross incentives. And there's just generally some fuzziness, some weirdness, and then, as I mentioned, the fly the spider was eating is still in there. So
Yeah.
we're gonna see. We'll see how it goes.
Some people have said, does this mean we're getting more PvP content? No. We're not going to be making like new PvP maps or anything like that. But as a good designer, Jonathan is looking at how things affect all of the game, including PvP.
Well, there's cost benefit thresholds, right?
Yeah.
Like for me, that's what it's about. Is I'm gonna watch. I'm gonna wait. I'm probably gonna wait longer to act than folks might be comfortable with sometimes, but that's gonna let me be more successful when I do act. And PvP is a situation that is like you do it two ways, right? You either update constantly. You're not afraid of creating up strange circumstances as an intermediate goal, and you work towards a better goal, and you're updating and balancing consistently. Stowe can never live in that world. I can't like easily nerf stuff that people have bought. I have to like restrain my balance changes to global powers. I have to be very cautious. And so now that I'm the master of my own destiny, it'll be a cold day in hell before you see me nerf something like Agony Redistributor. Like that's not a project I would undertake on my own, frankly. And generally speaking, I'm gonna try to be certain I'm onto something good that will improve the space before I push the change out, because that's how the model is. If this was a different game, a more PvP focused game where I could patch every couple weeks, then it'd be different. Then I'd be trying to like promote build diversity and like do incremental changes and collect stats and wait and see and win rate data and blah 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 blah. But this is not that game. This is like PvP and DDO. This is like Command and Conquer remastered ranked ladder. We're in niche audience land where the people who are here have been here a long time. They wouldn't be here if they didn't like it. So I'm gonna default to assuming that for the most part, on the main, they're happy with the way it is and they have a few problems with it. So I'm not trying to be the sheriff that's cleaning up the town. I'm just trying to like wait a little while, watch a little while, and if I'm like, that building would be better if it weren't on fire, maybe I'll go put the fire out.
All right. Let's see. That was pilot team. So now we're into hold together, where you doubled the scaling from high throttle.
Oh yeah, the throttle scaling is one of the unique pilot mechanics. Most of the powers that scaled with it were extremely tepid. I don't see a reason to clutch pearls. Like it can be strong. I'm gonna like anything that had pilot throttle scaling got more throttle scaling during the changes. That's the cool special thing. I want it to be more impactful.
All right. I'm gonna take a second and answer a question in Facebook because this question comes up all the time, and I want to make sure people understand the answer. So, Michael Crandall, Uh, you when people say they want Stowe to have a new engine, what they mean is they want the graphics to be better. They don't understand that. So people in the past have been like, what if you just ported Stowe to the Unreal Engine? Because they look at Unreal and they say, oh, all these games look really good. If we took all the code from the current Cryptic engine that powers Stowe and found a way to modify it all so that it works with Unreal and stuck it in the Unreal Engine, the game would look exactly the same and play exactly the same. It'd just be running on Unreal. Engine is not. I know people used to use it in marketing speak a ton of times in the 90s and 2000s. Upgrading an engine is not a magical way to make a game look, play, or feel better. It's just a different way of doing the code underlying the game.
Yeah, there's not really any world where Stowe reboots its engine.
Yeah.
To cut a long story short, that's that'd be like asking like, can you fix the A10's problem by replacing the GAU 8 with like a tank cannon or something? It's like, oh my no, for lots of reasons no.
If we ever made another Star Trek game, it would be on a different engine most likely, but this one's never changing.
Kirov reporting.
Yes.
Sorry, I just played a lot of Red Alert 2. A lot of Command and Conquer generally, but I played Red Alert 2 after they shut down the ladder. I was on the private ladder. I played that much. Yeah.
Cairo 47 says we need to make it on both Unreal and Unity. Yep, that's what we're gonna do. All right,
it's unified. It's in the name. Yeah.
Fly her apart. Damage buff is now improved, and it happens during build up as well as after. Tell me.
Yeah, pretty much. It's one of those where it's another thing where we asked you to do something difficult. We were stingy about what we gave you. We gave it to you slowly. I mean, you've heard this song and dance before. If you miss a platform when you jump in Mario, you fall into the fucking pit and you die. If you hit the platform, you are on the platform. There's none of this like ramping up from 1 to 15% off the platform. You slowly inch towards the strength factor positive pitfall. That's not what we want. We want it to be a straightforward interaction where you accept a drawback and you get a benefit.
Yeah. Okay. Well, there we go. Okay, we've got a couple more here. Two more left. Coolant ignition. Damage scales with engine power. Currently 0.5% additional per engine power. And initial detonation now has a large burst of damage, about 4.5%, 4.5 times the tick damage. Percent and times are very different.
Giggling at the escape capitalism comment.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I'm sorry, there is no escape from capitalism. We all wish there was.
The only place untouched by capitalism.
Space! Tim Curry deserves several Oscars just for that scene.
But yeah, sorry, which power were you asking about?
Coolant ignition.
Oh yeah, so that one it looks really cool when the coolant starts on fire. It's kind of weird that it didn't do anything special then, so I just added some damage to it because it's a moment of transition. And much like a lot of the other powers, I mean, it's the same refrain. You have to wait a long time to get your benefit. It compares unfavorably to things like Tychons and G-Well, where they just come out the gate and do what they're doing. So rather than change its nature, the thing that makes it special is that you spread the coolant, then ignite it. So I just put a large burst of damage on the coolant ignition.
Nice. All right. Firefly00, I have fond memories of Red Alert 3, but I mostly have fond memories of the YouTube video that they made a music video out of all of the that was great. All right.
Honestly, RA3 that was when the CNC3 was great, RA3 was great, but like they started I could talk for a long time about it. CNC3 shipped with more esports features than StarCraft 2 has today.
Yep.
That's how big their eyes were. That's what they wanted. They wanted CNC3 to take over esports. Obviously that did not pan out. And Red Alert 3 added special abilities to every single unit. They don't all need those. You have special abilities on some unit. Not every unit Psystorms. Like, guys, Red Alert 2 was my jam. Anyway.
Yeah. All right. So, last one is attack pattern lambda, or as Thomas Christopher Staten just said in Facebook chat, did you touch on attack pattern Lombata?
Attack pattern Lambada got a fair amount of attention, actually. It has a placate now, because confused without placate is really hard to feel. Like, if your foe is still shooting you, but is shooting other people also, it can be very hard to understand that that's happening. So the placate at least makes it more firm. And the placate is NPC only because, well, originally it was going to be work on NPCs and players with like a long lockout time, but like, why muddy the waters? I don't want to have to measure what a new placate interaction is doing alongside a placate immunity interaction. So, not screw up the data, I just made it not work on players. And
Perfect.
also, I removed the restriction where Lombardo only works on energy weapons because I did not see any possible reason for that. So, I, I just didn't understand why that was there. I might become sad. Yeah, we don't talk about CNC4, but we don't talk enough about CNC Soul Survivor, the prototype MOBA that released in the 90s that me and like 0 other people played, where you controlled an individual CNC unit and had no fun for a period of about 15 minutes and then uninstalled.
Ah, MOBAs. That's what we should do. We should make a ship-based Stow MOBA. Um, no, wait, we have that already. It's called
Ooh,
Defense Apollo.
1v1 PvP queue. Oh, that idea is so cursed it's intriguing. You have my attention.
All right, so that is all of the powers. That is the description. We are going to take some of your questions here in a minute. So throw them into chat, and I will ask. I will ask the questions that are useful to ask. Okay, so here's one. Let's see. Nope, that's not a systems question. That is a content question. Rafa,
Yeah.
sorry, Mark
Also, someone
Mark
was
KV
asking if I
Cod.
would make Tyken's area scale with stats. I don't like that Gravity Wells area scales with stats because you can't tell how big the dang thing is. Like, you should be able to. If I shoot a rocket in a video game and there's an explosion, I should be able to trust the explosion.
Yeah.
Like, that's a pretty key fundamental principle. If I am not allowed to take a sprite of Tyken's Rift and stretch it over the cosmos, I probably am not going to allow the gameplay effect to stretch.
Yeah. Wraith Shadow wants to know, are racial traits on your radar is something to look at for an update?
Hmm. I haven't really given them a ton of thought. The whole space is undergoing an evolution in games generally. Like, for people who grew up in the 90s and 80s, a lot of us just like, it's team. Like, that's what the word means. It means, but obviously it doesn't have that context. So with D&D switching to like legacy, I think is what they're calling it now, but they're
Yeah.
they're definitely busting out the tweezers and the microscope to try to find a way through the maze. And like, I don't see why I would approach the maze. It's definitely something that I'm interested in, like, fixing the badness with. Like, that's why I think we called them inherent abilities with the bridge officer token thingy. So like, maybe, but generally speaking, the space is radioactive enough. It makes the value proposition kind of questionable. There's bigger problems to wrangle.
Sure.
Number one, my priority, to predict whether or not I'm likely to do any given change. Let me tell you my priority. My priority is simple changes that do no harm that I can do fairly easily. That's like top priority. Second priority is the Dilex. Like, if I'm willing to get my hands a little dirty, if I'm willing to ask for other people's time, ask for leadership to let me do something, the Dilex is where I'm going.
Yeah. It needs help so badly. SFC 2411 triple testing for these things was going to happen this week, and then some stuff changed, and now these things are coming out this week. These changes to pilot, so the testing will occur on live. But the good news is we're watching and we'll be making changes, and have done a bunch of testing internally already, obviously. Okay.
Oh yeah, I'm not touching G-Well. Generally, I don't think we're going to do any big profile nerfs anymore. At least, if one had to happen, it would be like immediately after release when something was obviously broken. I
Yeah.
don't understand why we would nerf something old like G-Well.
Yeah. We have learned a lot of lessons from Agony Redistributor that everyone in this chat did not agree with those changes in the first place anyway. So,
I
uh,
mean, that's obviously like,
yeah,
that's right. Like, I can go pull up Augmented Dictator's video that complains about Agony Redist, and I'll see plenty of comments in favor of getting rid of it. It's just, once you catch the post office truck, you might not like what you caught, kind of thing.
yeah,
And like, ultimately, I think it's more about nerfs don't pass my tests to be cost effective in terms of how much the game gets better for how much work we put in.
Yeah.
That's what it comes down to me. It's obviously there's considerations about stuff people pay money for being changed out from under them. That sucks. That sucks a lot. An issue that I come to before I come to that issue is that the game doesn't appreciably get better when we move around what stuff is typed on DPS League's website. Like that doesn't really change the game experience that much for very many people. It just shuffles some numbers around in certain niche communities. It upsets their apple cart, but it doesn't help anybody. So like, why would I do it?
Okay, three different people posted the same question, and I don't know why or where that's they're okay. Anyway, that's weird, and I don't know why that happened, but
Oh,
they all
they're
want to
being
know
mirrored for a YouTuber. There's a YouTuber that I guess is like generating that question.
questions. Oh, okay, and they're copy and pasting it instead of the YouTuber coming. I guess that makes sense. Would it be
Yeah,
possible to lower the activation duration for team abilities, like TAC, Intel, Pilot, Psi,
yeah.
Engineering Team, when activation?
Possible, yes. Desirable, to be determined. That's a thing we could do. More likely, we would probably put in a way for you to opt into that, where like there's a power that lets you cycle them faster. But yeah, it's like any other possible power. It's kind of in this infinite spectrum, and the odds of like any particular mechanic or ability making it to a new feature is, I mean, unless it has something unusually resonant to do with the show or some important job in the meta, I'm not really sure why we would.
Yeah.
It's a cool idea, though. Not gonna lie, if you were pitching that to me as like, "This is my new trait for the lockbox, and it makes your team abilities cycle faster," I'd be like, "Nice. How are you doing that in our engine? That sounds complicated as hell, but it's interesting."
Trexpert, that's not a systems question. That is a what's the word I'm looking for? A tech question. We'd have to get Keith or Travis on here to talk about that. So sorry, I do not have an answer for you today.
I saw a question about call artillery that I can answer.
Oh yeah, that's
Basically,
what I was going to ask you next.
there was like a tooltip issue where, so this is a longer story, but call emergency artillery is fucking haunted. There's a lot of abilities that are haunted with their interaction with crit. And how it works is if you roll a crit hit when you summon call emergency artillery, the whole ability is stronger. So it secretly has been scaling off your crit chance the whole time. Incidentally, what a weird choice that I made crit chance the stat that scales reinforcement squadron. Who knows why I did that? Life's mysterious. But yeah, apparently they don't have their own crit sev. They interact with it through this really buggy code path. So we're not happy with the code path part. We're probably going to try to wiggle it a little bit behind the scenes. But removing the fake crit text where they look like they're critting but they can't crit caused them to fail to have their actually existing, actually damage relevant and very buggy interaction with crit, where your crit chance had a chance to improve their damage very considerably. And that's what caused them to tank in all the parses. There are a surprising number of abilities that do this exact same nonsense. There are plenty of abilities in Star Trek Online that like secretly care about your crit chance and modify your parses. Yeah, that's how the sausage works. I'm assuming there are probably corners of the player community that already knew that. This probably isn't news to everybody, but for anyone it's news to, hey, I'm glad to do my part to push the DPS League space forward very slightly in my small way. But since you already want crit chance for your ships for pretty much all purposes anyway, it probably isn't going to change decision space too much. But yeah, that's how it works.
Cool.
And that's why the ability got so weakened randomly.
Yeah. All right. Okay. All right, we got time for maybe I think one more question. So you let me know if you want to answer this one because this is before your time.
Sure.
Why do Tychon's Rift and Gravity Well share a
Oh,
cooldown?
I was going
That's
to answer
easy.
that one on my own if you didn't. So definitely before my time. And technically speaking, the answer to that question is I don't know because it touches intent, and I can't really speak as to the intent. I'm sure the answer resolves down to it seemed like a good idea at the time. I would say probably to me they were being positioned as alternatives. The idea was that you might want Tychons or you might want G-Well, but it's not where we landed. G-Well ended up being like a pillar of the meta. It's in particular because of the way it scales with Control X, and it's kind of evolved to the point where you can't easily mess with it anymore. It'd be sort of like if they just decided wave dashing wasn't in Smash Brothers. Who would do but yeah, it's kind of load bearing. It would really screw with the space. So we're probably not gonna, but you never know. I could see it being possible to like tweak Tychons just to like free it from the prison, but at the same time, Art's not the happiest with how Tychons looks. I'm not sure we're in love with the idea of drawing another huge flat sprite on your screen and leaving it up there for a long period of time.
Yes,
Like
please don't.
there's a lot of obstacles to the approach. I think it's unlikely to be let out of the bottle anytime soon.
Okay.
Call emergency artillery. We already reverted the nerf on. That was never an intended nerf.
Okay.
And no, we don't have any plans to adjust its DPS. We might take another whack at solving that weird crit text problem, but for that, we're going to need to understand what we want to do about the crit entity summoning situation. And that, in turn, is waiting on some of the stat scaling pet exploration. Once we get stat scaling pets kind of figured out, that's when I'm going to start to look at some of these like, you know, grandfathered in scalers where I'm going to want to make it not a bug anymore. I'm just going to like type on the tooltip that it scales with your crit in some way or otherwise officialize the mechanic. That's the way I intend to handle that.
Okay. Let's see. Okay, one more here. Um, could we have painful memories, the trait, interact with foe affecting pilot abilities as well as foe affecting engineering abilities since it's on a pilot ship? Do you know what that trait is?
Uh, yeah, generally any question that's about a rando trait, I may or may not know about it.
Let me
And
pull up Stowwiki and
yeah,
I'll
what's
describe
the
it
name
for
of
you.
it again?
Painful memories.
Yeah, I'm just pulling them up in the editor too, so that'll let me answer a lot of questions about like what they work with and whether they would work with other stuff.
Okay. It's okay. Activating engineering bridge officers causes all officer
Oh, that's
abilities
cute.
causes minus 50% slight speed and electrical damage for 10 seconds to affected foes.
Yeah, it's like the Zappy Dot. There's a ground pet that does this, sort of. I mean, sort of. It's supposed to be psionic. What causes a psionic energy resonance? All right then.
Yeah.
Make their EPS conduit psychic. That if walls could talk, I guess. Yeah. I'm not sure I understand the question enough to answer it. Frankly, what's the? They want it to work with pilot abilities. Where's
Yeah,
the
they wanted it
question?
to. So right now it activates when you use an engineering ability, and
Hmm.
they want it to also activate when you use a pilot ability.
Yeah, I don't think we would do that. That changes the identity of it, right? Like that's not making it better at something it's trying to do. That's giving it a brand new thing it wasn't trying to do before. We're extremely unlikely to do that.
Okay. Cool. All right. Well, John, I just want to thank you for coming on. This has been a great and really informative stream. I don't know if you've noticed all the comments flowing in about how great you are and how much they
It's
love that you
humbling.
know the game as well as you do. I appreciate it as well. Um, yeah. Thank you so much for being on. And is there anything else you want to talk about yourself or the future of systems things or?
Sure. I would say that every free to play game has challenges with communications where sometimes it is easy to lose sight of the human behind the screen.
Hmm.
And especially people have to operate with a very limited understanding of how the inside of the business works. There are plenty of times where I've seen people catch heat for stuff they had nothing to do with. And someday that's going to be me. Sooner or later, I'm going to catch a ton of heat for something I had nothing to do with. I'm
Yep.
probably going to catch heat for stuff I did have to do with. That's just life. And I think that's natural in a lot of ways. Like outrage is contagious, outrage is in some ways healthy, and it keeps us on our toes. But one thing that I personally don't have a ton of bandwidth for is honest acrimony. I used to be a pretty prolific poster on the Stowe subreddit. I don't go there anymore because that space got kind of weird. Jeremy's a good friend of mine. He doesn't work on Star Trek anymore. He works on different stuff in the studio, but he did good work. We're happy with the work he did. And players got some players in particular, and I don't want to paint the whole community, but some players got pretty upset at him.
Yeah.
And I don't mind any of that. But I do think that we will all be a little bit happier if we try to remember what good looks like. If we try to have a conversation with each other where we're a little bit more respectful. And that's part of why I swear so much is because I don't want to come up and talk corpo speak. If my job ever becomes mouth corpo speak to a webcam, I'm gonna call in sick pretty often, I'll tell you that. But I think that there is a lot of fundamentally aligned incentives. Like at the end of the day, systems team, the devs, the designers are a hell of a lot more like players than they are like a business. And that the line of scrimmage, so to speak, is usually players and devs over here, and then like business incentives and parent companies and market realities over here. And I think that if I can move the needle on the conversation, that's the way I'd like to move it. I'd like to get back some of that more, I don't want to say camaraderie, but like the door's open and we can have a conversation and people are less mad, and like I don't got to read weird conspiracy theories about how, the
Yeah.
deep state sent Bordicus to something something, like decisions that like no designer ever gets to make. It's like, nah,
Yeah, I mean, even
not
on top of
that's not
that,
what that's not what our
like
job is.
the
We're toy
folks,
makers.
yeah, and even on top of that, the folks like, it is usually players and devs over here and business interests over here, but even these people are not, and this is where I get some flack sometimes, but even these people are people, and you don't want to have everybody lobbing fireballs this way too. A lot of times when I'm like, hey, we should treat the devs with more respect, people respond with, yeah, we should turn all our ire against the higher ups instead, and like,
Yeah, like
you know,
that's gonna help, right?
it
Like you
doesn't.
can yell at an individual gangster until the town is better. That's not
Yeah.
how anything works. Like you gotta hate the game, not the player.
Well, yeah, and I mean, just talk to us. We like talking. Don't threaten to murder us. Looking at you, Stowe Reddit. And
Oh, I have an entirely cheating answer to the Satoverse's question. My
okay.
favorite pilot ship hasn't been announced yet.
Is it the one that's getting announced very soon?
Probably.
Yeah, I have a feeling. Uh,
I'm quite happy with it.
I am excited to try it. I love pilot ships. We'll see if you can make one good enough to make me fly away from my Machla, which is still my favorite ship in the whole game. But all right. Okay, cool. So folks, okay, since this has been posted 4 times, Asumuwa, uh, that's not a thing. It's one of those conspiracy theories that John and I were just talking about. A bunch of people ran back traces at one point when they were getting lag and decided what they uh, decided that the data they got said one thing. We have confirmed multiple times with everybody, our ISP, the people at the end of the line, our people who are. That's not what's happening, and I know that's became part of the narrative a long time ago. But no, that's not it. All right. Can I confirm or deny or confirm a mirror universe dauntless? I cannot confirm or deny anything. Okay, cool. Well,
Also, I want to say one other thing in response to the extremely positive comments. First, obviously, big thank you to you guys for being cool about this. But the thing I want to say is, it's going to sound weird, but I would not judge the people who get real upset too harshly. The guys who are posting the weird conspiracy theories and stuff, they're not coming from a place where they're like trying to make things worse. They're trying to make things better. They care a lot. They're passionate.
they just
They're a
need to
little
go to therapy.
misguided. But a lot of times, yeah, they're coming from a dark place in their lives. Like sometimes
Hmm.
these are literal kids, like actual factual children. Sometimes they're just people who are in a dark place in their life right now and they're having a bad day. I'm not going to judge them for blowing off some steam on a Reddit. And most of them don't think it's as serious as it comes across to us. Like you can type a mean comment in Reddit 40 million times and it's not going to matter to you, but you don't have to read very many before it matters.
Yeah. Um, and just to say this to make sure it's said, I absolutely always empathize with those people, but it doesn't mean I won't ban them.
Oh yeah.
just to be clear.
I mean, this is a long conversation. I would have to go. Oh God, I am from the internet. I am an old man. I have seen everything.
I saw
God,
starships on fire on Orion.
yeah. In the old times, after the fall of IRC, when Portal of Evil had just begun to blight the land,
Yeah,
like
yeah,
I
exactly.
know the deep magics, and the super TLDR is that there's a meta. The same way that I'm saying don't hate the player, hate the game with regards to free to play monetization, I think there's similar for posting salacious content, for being mean on the internet to strangers. It's rewarded by perverse incentives in the system.
Yeah,
But hey,
there's
that's
a.
every
It
expert,
also
right?
is.
Like
It's a
anyone
serotonin hit.
who's an expert in a field is going to tell you their field is the answer. So obviously, I'm going to tell you systems is the answer.
Yeah. You're absolutely wrong. Community is the answer. Anyway, thank you all so much for joining us. I am going to find us someone to raid really quick. So let me see. Oh, Wait, that's the wrong button. Sorry. Going to. Here we go.
Oh God, Mucks and Muds.
Little Chumba, we did
Ah,
not
that
find your
takes me
Kumakari
back.
art account. Please don't tell us about that. Or if you do, tell us off stream. All
I
right.
can't remember the name of the Muck I played. Ugh, I can barely remember anything about it. Wow. I wonder how old I was. Anyway,
Yeah.
I'm just keeping Mike late at this point. That's just mean.
No,
We
that's
we
it's
all good.
fine. I'm looking for somebody for us to raid really quick. I think I'm just gonna
Ah,
raid Cleon Pop Warrior because she's great. Okay. Slash raid. And there we go. All right. Well, folks, it's been an absolute pleasure. We'll see you next time, next week. And next week, because everything will be announced, I promise we will have details on the anniversary bundle then. All right. Bye bye, everyone. Bye bye. Bye bye now. Bye bye. Bye bye.